In case you've not had a chance to have a look at what this book's about, I'll just issue a clear content warning. See What You Made Me Do covers coercive control, family and domestic violence, rape, and murder in really quite confronting detail. It's a heavy read. I wanted to talk about this book after having read it a couple of times now and highlighting and annotating the hell out of it. I've studied sex and gender, and I like to think I can at least make a valiant attempt to break down some of the important ideas in here. Journalist Jess Hill has written this book essentially on men's violence and abuse. She'd been writing on this for 6 years, collecting stories and data and talking with anyone and everyone. She spends the first part of the book sort of categorizing different kinds of not just abuse, but perpetrators and their patterns of behaviour. She's put a lot of emphasis on the early signs of abuse, or the red flags, if you will, and makes it as clear as she can that although there's no, one set play for abusers, there's some pretty clear patterns, especially in the way coercive controllers sort of ramp up their behaviour over time. There's a feminist lens put on a lot of this, and a real deconstruction of masculinity, which was really good. She takes very seriously the first actions of an abuser, knowing that once shame, especially public or societal shame, come into play, that it's really hard to bring a male abuser back out. To simplify, or probably complicate things, masculinity in colonial Australia is this sort of hierarchical power structure which is very much self-policing, and men climb this sort of hegemonic masculinity ladder by showing themselves or others that they are in control of something or someone, or they have someone who is completely and utterly devoted to them and serving their needs. A lot of the time that's going to mean reinforcing patriarchal power structures within relationships. To push the friendship on the ladder analogy, Jess Hill is tackling the bottom rungs, the abusers that are checking their partner's phone all the time, making sure that they know where their partner is all the time. These sorts of red flags are behaviours that we as a society can change on a cultural level. But masculinity doesn't care if an abusive man is texting his partner all the time and expecting immediate responses, or questioning when she wants to go out and have a coffee with her mates. And so abusers can keep climbing this ladder unchecked until they reach violence. And the problem here is it's too late by that point. They've got that mentality ingrained in them. And yeah, society suggests that men's violence against women is inexcusable, but everything leading up to that went unchallenged, or in most cases, unnoticed outside of the relationship. Then, even if an abuser is caught red-handed assaulting or murdering a woman, they just jump off the top of the masculinity ladder and are shunned. Jess writes about the public campaigns of real men don't hit women, and all this sort of rhetoric that still reinforces the idea of the real man. This hyper-competitive social construct that is in fact still killing people. And what happens when the constructed man does kill someone is they're simply rejected as not being part of what man is at all, and all of a sudden they are a monster, not a man. There's no self-reflection going on here, even though it's so clear that the concept of man is what is producing the abusers. Jess addresses the age-old question of why didn't she just leave, and criticises the shopping list of different mental health conditions offered to women in abusive relationships. Not arguing that people in abusive relationships don't have bipolar or borderline personality disorder or PTSD, but quite justifiably using the alarming rate of these diagnoses as an example of showing that people who have been in dangerous situations for months or years or decades with kids, pets, or any amount of blackmail, plus social isolation and constant belittling and gaslighting, shouldn't be in any way expected to pull out some sort of action movie moves in order to escape from a world that they've been socially conditioned to, if not physically trapped in. The question really needs to be, well, how do we keep that person safe, and why did the abuser come back? Jess looks around the world at different models trying to address the issue of people being unable to leave abusive relationships, even when crimes have been substantiated. There's one example, I think it was from Scotland, where the police have been given the authority to come in and remove violent perpetrators from the house if they believe their partner is in danger, even if the victim doesn't say so. It was good, but as Jess outlines in one of the most frustrating parts of the book, a lot of the time the police and the court system are really dismally failing. There's a whole list in here of cases, murders that have been carried out by men who have a clear and long history of violent crimes and domestic abuse charges to their name. It's horrifying. Like, a lot of us know firsthand, one way or another, but just to see laid out the amount of murderers whose victims as well as former partners have done all the right things. They've done everything in their power to give the police what they supposedly need to stop an offender. And to see so many times in this book and so often in households in Australia, repeat offenders with histories are still allowed to control, abuse, rape and kill women in a way that would never happen for any other type of crime. This is a book that people need to read. It's accessible, which is one of the great things about it. Like, often this topic is not just heavy content-wise, but also really academic, whereas this is the sort of book that I can hand to a male colleague or family members or whoever. Most people in this country will have a connection with some aspect of this book. It's imperative that we don't just see a string of crimes or denounce domestic violence, but we actually address the structural issues that are allowing this epidemic of men's violence against women and children to continue.